What is an obvious plot hole in TV series or movie that went massively unnoticed? West Side Story. Tony runs into an entirely Hispanic neighborhood, yells Mariah, and only one girl answers? Yes, because he didn't say the middle name. So they are all just waiting for him to finish saying everything. And the 4 last names. Mariah de Jesus Guadalupe Gonzalez Hernandez. 5 girls and 2 guys responds. Would be like running into the Gap and yelling John. And only one guy turns around. My name is John. I've never been to a Gap. Is this where I find my people? No, fellow John, you would not find me there either. The clothes in Shrek Fiona's dress always changes shape with her whenever she switches forms. But in Shrek 2, Shrek's clothes don't change, and he ends up having to rob a dude to get some new duds. Then, at the end of the movie, when they turn back into ogres, Fiona's white dress magically turns back into the green one, which fits her perfectly of course, and Shrek's human clothes turn back into his ogre clothes which he abandoned earlier after the robbery. Just rewatched the movie with my son and that made me irrationally angry. Fiona's curse is a different kind of magic? I dunno. I just assumed Fiona bought her clothes at the same store as the Hulk. That tailor that works for the Freezer Force. Entangled, Rapunzel has been locked in a tower for her whole life, yet can swim when her and Flynn are escaping the palace guards. This always bothered me way more than it should. Similarly, as one of the 12 people who saw the Blood Rain movie, she was a vampire her whole life. Water damages them in law. She finds a jewel that lets her not be damaged by water, and suddenly also knows how to swim. Bipedal species, that is humans. Apes don't instinctively know how to swim like quadrupeds, dogs, horses, elephants. We need to be taught how to swim. In other words, I agree with you. I just wanted to say stuff. Mate, if you start looking for things wrong with you, bowel movies are gonna be here a while. Aladdin. His first wish is make me a prince, so genie makes him a prince, and he goes to meet a princess with a big parade, etc. Then for the rest of the show, he's afraid that Princess Jasmine and the Sultan will discover that he is a street urchin, but he's a prince. The most powerful non-religious being in the universe made him a prince. He didn't say give me a parade in trance, like I'm a prince, he said make me a prince. So, he's a prince. Period. End of story. Prince. That's just part and parcel of imposter syndrome. Aladdin knows the genie has all but successfully made it impossible to question Aladdin's royal heritage, power, and influence, but deep down Aladdin knows this isn't him. Al is dealing with the psychological ramifications of inheriting a position he believes himself to be unworthy of and actively despises on some level, because it's still a position of authority and that goes against his ideological background. What Al is really terrified of is someone saying you don't belong here. Mind if I call you Al? Or maybe just Din? How about laddie? Here boy, here laddie. In Cars, when Lightning McQueen is in court and Doc dismisses the case, even pounds the gavel. Then Sally waltzes in there and basically begs Doc to hold McQueen accountable. He then changes his mind and sentences him to fix the road. How can a judge declare a case dismissed and then take it back and sentence him? Always bugged me when I would listen to that movie while driving. The kids watched it all the time. The Carsian legal system is much more kangaroo courty than ours, apparently. I worked in a courthouse. Judges could do or say whatever they wanted. It wasn't final until the clerks filed the paperwork. After that it took some work to change, but before that, it's all whatever. Okay, well, answer me this. Does Lightning McQueen have car insurance, health insurance, and all life insurance? And why? I got another question. If a car is parked on the street instead of in a garage or other enclosed space, are they considered homeless? Rick just chilled in the hospital for weeks. No new fourth, no food. He just laid there. A friend that's a nurse said he would have been dead from dehydration within 4 days. Within 4 days I could do it in 3. Take it or leave it. He would have died before the flowers did. The nurse kept dumping out the water and replacing it. Nothing to see here. Plot twist, Rick is still in a coma in the hospital and this is all in his mind. In episode 2F09, when Archie plays Scratch's skeleton like a xylophone, He strikes the same rib twice in succession, yet he produces two clearly different tones. I mean, what are we to believe? That this is a magic xylophone, or something? Haha, boy, I really hope somebody got fired for that blunder. I'll feel that one. Let me ask you a question. Why would a grown man whose shirt says genius at work spend all of his time watching a children's cartoon show? I withdraw my question. Same rib twice in succession, you casual. In Once Upon a Time, the town is not enterable by normal people outside. How are they getting their supplies? Man, that whole show was whack. Much more fun if take out the fairy tale parts and assume the whole town is playing into the kids' delusions. Cruella de Vil was by far the greatest character that show produced, as she acted like she knew she was a villain in a miscast Renfire and just went for it. I stopped watching after the curse was broken in season 1. The writers clearly didn't know what to do after that. Also, two Cinderellas, seriously? I chose to abandon all sense and just watch for fun. Same for Rick and Morty. In Criminal Minds, Hotch got stabbed 9 times the same day Reed got shot in the leg. In the next episode, staged 30 days later, Hotch was normal and returned to duty. It took like half a season before Reed was off crutches cane and was able to do normal stuff in the field. I think the actor busted his leg. Eye roll. People heal differently from different wounds. And don't the stab wounds end up causing problems later on? I may be misremembering. They did. He passed out like 3 seasons later. But like Reed was fine to sit by himself for a while so the others could do their thing, and Hotch nearly died. Wounds heal differently, but 1 episode later, and Hotch was fine. Great show though. Not sure if plot hole, but the least believable part of Endgame is when Tony Stark drives up in an Audi e-tron, and it makes revving noises. It's a fully electric car. Maybe he customized it to make revving noises? I dunno. Seems like the kind of thing Tony Stark might do. Aren't there real cars that already do that? Or sports cars that do have internal combustion engines, but they are too quiet, so there are speakers to fake the sound it should have. EU law requires electric cars to have some kind of engine noise so that they are easier to notice. Same with the US. That's the least believable part for you? Toy Story. Buzz Lightyear still throws around children, even though the whole point of his arc was him not believing he's a toy. I always thought that this was an innate instinctual reaction that all toys have, regardless of whether they know the truth of their condition or not. This was my belief too. It's reality's way of confirming that Buzz is a toy, no matter how irrational his personal beliefs are. How though if Woody and the other toys are able to overcome the reaction to scarcity? Maybe it's kind of like blinking. You do it without thinking, but if you focus and concentrate, you can keep your eyes open. I think it's a reflex, or Buzz was following the lead of the natives of a potentially hostile planet in dealing with large unknown aliens. Scarlet Witch has a heavy Russian or Ukrainian accent in her first appearance in the Marvel films Age of Ultron maybe, and then completely lost the accent in future movies. Not sure much a plot hole as an oversight, but it bothers me. I actually looked this up and there was something about how she's training with Natasha to do spy stuff, so her accent is one of the things that would need to be dropped. Yay Star Wars levels of covering up plot holes. We see her being coached by Nat in the beginning of Civil War, no plot holes or even retcons. Yeah, that's honestly enough for me. I don't need a whole training sequence of her being taught to cover her accent to suspend my disbelief like this. Doesn't bother me anymore after someone presented me with a possible theory, but as much as I enjoyed Zootopia, I couldn't help but wonder what the predators are eating if they no longer hunt for prey. Someone told me they might eat insects or fish. Wow, this really blew up. Maybe this is probably far-fetched. The society is advanced enough where they have access to forks meat, like lab-grown stuff, that we are starting to see more and more of. Considering all the other accommodations several species get, that wouldn't be too far a stretch. I once went to a talk held by the writers of Zootopia, and they confirmed that the predators ate insects as a protein replacement. They even went so far as to design a cricket burger fast food restaurant while the film was still in its raw concept phase. Aren't fish and insects sentient too? There is no way a single wizard's fireball 3rd level spell would do jack against Demogorgon in the Stranger Things D&D game. Speaking of Demogorgon, I'll copy paste a post I made elsewhere. Stranger Things, the Dungeons and Dragons game. Did you see the little figure of Demogorgon? It had hyena heads. That was a redesign from the Book of Vile Darkness, published in 2002. If these kids were from the 80s, then Demogorgon should have had mandrill heads instead. Boy, I really hope somebody got fired for that blunder. It's a 3rd level spell, but damage is proportional to the level of the caster. You can see in both D&D and AD&D First Ed, not sure which they were playing. It's 1d6 per level of the caster. It's conceivable that Will's character was a high level magic user, but had already used up his higher level spells, but Fireball would still do a fair amount of damage. However, Fireball would be an automatic hit, so Will wouldn't have to roll. The Demogorgon would have to roll to save for half damage, though. Grey's Anatomy. This season, Mer commits insurance fraud by putting her own child's name on the forms, so an immigrant child can get cancer treatment. Mer owns a large share of the hospital, her name is on the building, etc. Why didn't she write it off, do it pro bono, or meet with the board to come up with a legal action to help the kid? It makes zero sense that she would jeopardize her career and freedom when she had several other options. Mer owns a large share of the hospital. Her name is on the building, etc. As someone who hasn't watched this show in years, it sounds like I missed some crazy developments. Yeah, a lot happened. I don't watch it, but my partner does without spoiling anything. Basically a group of the main characters all come into some money, so they decide to just buy the hospital between themselves. They quite literally bought part of the hospital they got from suing the hospital. It's comedic. Obviously, this hasn't gone unnoticed by anybody on Earth, as far as I know, but X-Files Skull is unflagging incredulity. Episode XO Mulder, there must be a scientific explanation for these ghosts. But there isn't. And she sees them too. Episode YO Mulder, there must be a scientific explanation for the lava demons. But there isn't. And she sees them too. And seems to have forgotten about ghosts. Episode ZO Mulder, there must be a scientific explanation for the man lamprey that lives in water treatment plant pipes. But there isn't. And she sees it too. And seems to have forgotten about ghosts and lava demons and green men and grey men, and smoking men and etc. Yeah, I'd think she'd be tired of saying that's impossible Mulder, and then being proven wrong. And yet, she's the religious one, right? Didn't Scully admit that after a while she was playing the skeptic mostly, to keep Mulder from focusing on his first idea, when it was almost never his first guess? No way Kevin's parents would only find out he was missing from their group, when they were already well underway in the plane to Paris. They counted a random kid, before getting on the plane. They actually believed Kevin was there. And overslept, and rushed the gate, because they're late and Kevin's ticket was thrown out the night before when milk spilled on it during Pizza Fuller meltdown. In I, Robot, the doctor kills himself, because he can't get a message out due to being under surveillance 24/7. Yet somehow he makes a robot in secret. Couldn't he have used his secret area to get the message out? Or given the robot some instructions to do that without killing himself? Vicky was blocking all of Dr. Lanning's communications, etc. But it let him make a robot, because Vicky was simply unable to comprehend the possibility that a robot brain could be made to defy the 3 laws. In fact, most of humanity wouldn't accept that possibility either at that point. Lanning knew that one of the very few people who could both make that connection and be in a position to investigate it should some dramatic event, such as his death, bring it to his attention, was his old cop patient Spooner. The whole trail of breadcrumbs was well hidden and vague. There's no way she'd have been able to predict it. I hate that movie so much. We saw it like 0.15 times in a row to escape not having air conditioning until it got repaired. That dollar theater was a bit like purgatory. Ocean's 11. How'd they get the bags containing the flyers for hookers into the vault? I thought they carried the bags into the vault with them as the responding SWAT team. The van with the money bags in it had already left by the time the SWAT team arrived with their bags. No? Yes. It's a plot hole. Genuinely one of the biggest plot holes in modern movies. I like the director and writers admitted it's a plot hole that doesn't make sense, and there's nothing in the story that really fixes it. The only solution I can think of would be that the flowers weren't down in the vault at all, they just switched bags at the elevators or something, but still, their presence doesn't make any sense. In the Vampire Diaries they said vampires cannot be witches, because they are abomination of nature, you could only be one or the other. Then on further seasons they introduce vampire witches hybrids. Also in the first ep I think Damon appears as a crow or raven, but then he never does again, that was weird. Yes, he was also able to control mist. Yeah, it was based on his powers from the TVD books and they dropped it after the pilot. As for the heretics, I think they are the exception to the rule or something. In Frozen, Anna falls into a stream that should been frozen solid by Elsa's ice magic. When she froze the fountain that didn't freeze every body of water in the kingdom, the water in that stream might not have been connected to the body of water that she froze around Parental. In Vikings they live in Kattegat, which is in Denmark, but they clearly live in a fjord. Denmark is completely flat. Additionally, the fjords are only found in Norway, and more specially along the western coast of Norway. And in one episode they go to Sweden, which is portrayed as a relatively easy walk, but that would entail they would walk from western coast of Norway across the entire country over a massive mountain range to reach the border of Sweden. This doesn't answer your question, but I worked with a few Danes who moved to the US and they always referred to Denmark as the Nebraska of Europe. I hate myself for saying this, but the time turner in Harry Potter. If that kind of magic exists, then nothing bad needs to ever happen. Or, if somehow bad things still happened, and we still ended up with the same plot points, then the time turner should have been a major weapon in their arsenal during the hunt for the Horcruxes. I believe they retconned this out with Cursed Child, but in book 5 they destroy all of the time turners in the Battle of the Ministry. Prior to that fight most people don't believe that Voldemort is back, and that it's a cry for attention by Harry and a ministry power played by Dumbledore, so there was no reason to weaponize the time turners. I totally forgot about the time turners being destroyed at the ministry. Still, controllable time traveler is an iffy thing to include in a story in which lots of bad things happen. It begs for an explanation for why they aren't used universally.